Welcome to Sacred Rebels podcast, where we discuss life after trauma as we question societal norms and shatter stigmas. Are you a woman who longs for a sense of community and understanding? Well, stick around. There is a seat for you here. This is your host, Tay.
And co-host Amy.
And we're just two best friend millennial moms and entrepreneurs navigating life and motherhood while on a spiritual healing journey.
We don't do surface level, and we're definitely not your typical moms, so let's dig deep. We plan to cover it all and take you behind the scenes as we share our personal experiences, learn more about the holistic side of healing, and introduce all the incredible humans we've met along the way.
Join us as we share the good, the bad, and the ugly side of healing. We hope to help you step into your power. Thanks so much for listening. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Sacred Rebels. Tonight we have Donna Marston here and we're so excited. This is our first official Zoom meeting, Zoom podcast. So if there's some hitches, just bear with us and Aim will introduce her after we do our big deep breath.
Okay, one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. Really breathe in through the nose, lift up, fill up, rise up, and then slowly exhale, let it go. So I'm so excited to introduce our guest tonight. She is Donna Marston. She is the founder of Sharing Without Shame. And Donna and I go way back. I've spoken at a couple of her meetings. We have worked parallel in the recovery world for a few years now. I think it's about 9 or 10. And it's really been beautiful to see all the magical work she does. So we're excited to have her talk about her things. And she actually had a deck at her home called, what was it called? Sacred
Power.
Sacred Power. So she pulled a deck from her house and she is going to talk about that card.
So the card I pulled is Affirmations, which is interesting because going back into my story, this is how it all started. You know, for me, starting my healing journey was with Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life.
That's an amazing
Ooh.
book. 10 out of 10 recommend. I actually had to read that one, my first 200-hour yoga teacher training.
Really?
Yeah, I read that book and it's
I'm
like
gonna
a
have to
journal.
write this.
It's so good.
What was it again?
Louise
You Can Heal
Hayes.
Your Life by Louise Hay. The interesting thing about it is, and we'll get into this later possibly, is my son was in active addiction at the time when I hit my enough in 2006. And I knew I had to do something because I was just an emotional disaster. I was a mess. I wasn't available to anybody who was healthy. I was just so sick. And I found this book, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And I started doing the positive affirmations, and there's cards that you can get. And in this card, it shows all the chakras, which is interesting because I balance chakras and auras. I have a practice where I do that.
You do Reiki?
I'm a Shambhali Reiki master.
Amazing.
I don't practice it like I used to. I don't do the hands-on because I had negative energy take over in my body, and I had a hard time getting it out many years ago, even though I did everything I was supposed to. So I'm not as hands-on, but I work with these plasma energy spheres, which is live and mindful energy.
Amazing.
And then I do a guided visualization. And as I take the people through, I balance their auras and chakras. So this kind of taps into that as well.
I love that.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And the other
that
book that
card is
Louise has
beautiful.
is You Can Heal Your Life A to Z. If you haven't heard of this one, anything that you can possibly imagine for an illness is in this book, and you look it up. So say like addiction or you have a backache, I don't know, whatever, cancer, you look it up and it will tell you the probable cause. And then it will tell you the positive affirmation, how you can change your life by putting Post-its all over the place. So if you know her story, that's how she
That's amazing.
beat cancer.
Well, the mind is so powerful, and we
Yep.
are so powerful. We are the greatest healers. I've been talking about it where we're like, we've been so dumbed down and dulled down because, health insurance, it's $1 billion industry to have sick people.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to know that
Yep.
you can heal yourself
Yeah.
with your mind, and you can, rewire it's wild.
Yeah, it's in Tony Robbins' new book.
Yeah.
He wrote all about it, how this guy literally healed himself from cancer, and they told him he had 6 months to live and he had to do like chemo, radiation. And he was like, nah, like I'm not doing that. I'm going to go
Yeah.
home and heal myself.
Yeah.
Everybody was like calling him an absolute miracle.
Yeah.
Louise's story is similar.
Yeah, that's so crazy. I'm gonna have to read
Yeah,
it.
and she had cervical cancer because she was molested as at like 14 years old. And often she talks about, wherever your illness is where you've been either violated or there's a trauma.
Mm.
And she started doing positive affirmation. She had, I believe, 3 months to live, and she put Post-its everywhere. And
Wow.
when she went back to the doctors, there was no sign of cancer. And I think she was in her 50s or so when that happened, and she lived well into her 80s.
Wow, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
pretty
So
powerful.
beautiful. Yeah.
So powerful.
How my son got sober was with that book.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell us
Yeah.
a little bit of your story about your son, if you feel comfortable to do so, how you got into this position of, having a business and a support group and all of that stuff.
So my son started using, oh God, when he was like 14, I think. And mother's intuition is something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. And I would ask questions and he would tell me I was crazy. And, like 14, 15 and 18, I think he had a couple of situations. And I'm like, are you sure it's not drugs or, what's going on? We put him in private school and, and I couldn't figure it out. I suspected for a very long time. And from the age of 20 to 25 is when I thought I was going to die. My heart was so broken. And there is a thing called broken heart syndrome.
Yeah.
And any mom or dad, well, most moms, I think, because that's typically who I work with, other moms, because we think we're going to love our kids into recovery, right?
Yeah.
And so my heart was just so broken, and this was a long, painful journey that I chose to do alone. I tried going to like Al-Anon, but they irritated me because they kept telling me to come back. And it's like, I want the answer now. My child's not like your child, okay, or your husband or whatever. Like, you guys can sit here and cry. Just tell me what to do. I'll go home and I will save him. And so that didn't work out real well for me. I made a lot of mistakes. I got sicker and sicker and sicker, emotionally sicker as time went on because I kept it a secret.
Yeah.
Because back then, this was like late 1990s. You didn't talk about it like you can today.
Yeah.
And so when it started to come out that my son might have an issue, my phone stopped ringing. People think you have cooties.
That's so terrible.
Right. You know what? But I would not change one thing from then to now, because I think if I didn't go through all that heartache and that pain, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I wouldn't be able to give back, and I wouldn't be an energy healer or an intuitive healer. None of that would have happened.
I say the same thing. I literally say it all the time. I'm like, everything, I have no regrets. I know that every single thing that happened to me all the way up until even right now, is happening so I can learn a lesson, because I am willing to do the uncomfortable things, and I'm willing to share and talk about the uncomfortable things and be honest and be vulnerable.
Yep.
And right now in today's world and from where we grew up, that's a superpower. Vulnerability is a superpower now. And not a lot of people have it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, this is, I think that a lot of people who have a substance use disorder or are diagnosed with a substance use disorder are empaths or empathic. They're highly
100%.
sensitive, and that's why they self-medicate.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's exactly what I
And
think
they
too.
have some sort of trauma because they were too trusting of people, or, you know, people saw something in them that they wanted. And, you know, it's continual path of most empaths get into relationships with narcissists.
Yep.
And, you know, it's just like all of those like same
Things.
Yeah.
patterns
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
lead to the substance because it's an escape. Because we aren't taught how to process our deep feelings
Or emotionally regulate. Yeah, any of it.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, being, you know, I don't have an SUD, and I'm highly sensitive. I'm a fairly high level empath. And all my life, up until I'm in my very, very late 60s, and up until like 2 or 3 years ago, I thought I had a character defect, because all my life I've been told, for God's sakes, Donna, you're too sensitive, let it go. I always thought I was the problem.
You're too sensitive. You're too sensitive. Yeah.
Right?
No.
And you feel like crap. And I ended up reading a book by Judith Orloff, who's like the godmother of empaths. I don't know if you know of her. And you can define all the levels of the different empaths. And I realized I had a gift, right? And so many people are gifted and they just don't know it.
Yep.
Every single person on this earth has a special gift that they're supposed to share with the world. Like every single one of us is unique, and we just have to figure out that gift that is meant to share with the world. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like we're all uniquely special. We just have been taught we're not, and layered on these broken belief systems, and to make us small and make us easily puppeted.
Although, it's the, you know, the negative programming, right? That's done to pretty much everybody. And you know, it's passed down through generations. You know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like 14 generations it's passed down. So even if like you haven't, or we haven't experienced significant trauma in this lifetime, it doesn't mean that it's not like coded in our DNA, which is just mind-blowing when you really think about it.
Ancestors.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy.
But I still want to, we got, this is great because we're amazing and we get sidetracked. It happens all the time. But okay, so your son, what year did your son get sober? When did you start families sharing without shame before he got sober? You created your own, like how did that all start? How did it happen?
So my son got sober in 2008 on Mother's Day, which, what a gift, right? And I was just I can be kind of a shy person and reserved, but I just wanted to help. I just wanted to make a difference, because my son's a great guy. He was a great kid who happens to have, you know, a substance use disorder, and all this stuff is happening. And I don't know. So I started knocking on doors and asking people if I could help. And I was told to tone down your light. One person told me, like, they wouldn't let me in until I met this one woman. And she worked in town in Concord. And she said, and I went to her and I said, this is what I'm trying to do. I just want to help somebody else. So she introduced me to this gentleman by the name of Tim Rourke, who worked for, at the time, the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. And they were doing a recovery mission for the state of New Hampshire. And they invited me to go up to Knoll Farm in Vermont for a week.
Wow.
Like, I don't camp. I don't go camping.
Hashtag glamping. We go glamping.
And I don't
glamping.
like the woods. So they have me in a yurt in the woods. And I had to hike up this mountain every day to go to this huge yurt. And all the people that were there were people in recovery, you know, kind of formulating, how is this mission going to work? And I was the only mom that was there.
Wow.
And when we were leaving, we all made a commitment of what we were bringing back to our state. And my commitment was that I would start family support. And that's when Family Sharing Without Shame was founded.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And what is families, what is it? Like what do you focus on? What do you do? What let's tell, what is it?
How
Well,
often
up
do you
until
meet?
COVID hit, it was a family support group, and I ran one at Concord Hospital on Thursday nights, and then I did one at Farnham on Sunday mornings. And it was a support group where people were never shamed. They were they were educated about addiction. I hate labels. I hate negative labels. I hate the A words. And so if they came into my meetings, if you wanted to talk about your child, you use their name. You didn't call them an addict or an alcoholic, because that's not who my son is, or
I love that
anybody
so
who has a
much.
substance use disorder.
Amen.
That's not who they are. And so that was really important to me,
Yeah.
that they learn proper language. And what I noticed is that when people say the first time they came in and they'd, I'd say, hey, my name's Donna, and they have to admit to everybody that they don't know that I have a child in active addiction, because they would use the A words, and they would sob and they would cry. And I would say, that's not who your child is, right? You have a beautiful child who happens to have a
Yeah,
substance use disorder.
exactly.
And so I educated them about what addiction is, how it affects their brains, how it affects their bodies. More importantly, I taught them that we can't love our kids into recovery. I taught them that that unhealthy helping is not good. What does
Yeah,
that
like
look like?
enabling, yeah, all
Yeah,
of that.
and I taught them that, like calling people a parent, enabler, or codependent is blaming and shaming for loving their child.
Yeah.
So I prefer to use unhealthy helping. So
Use the
yeah,
language.
I think it's just kinder, and I see parents just their bodies just like relax. They're not so uptight about it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I teach is that um, you know, let's stop kicking our kids to the curbs, right? They need to be loved more, not less. It's
Yeah.
all about, connection. And now, are there times where you might have to ask your child to leave, your teen or adult child? Yeah, because if they're harming you
Yeah.
or it's unsafe, well, that's a different thing. My son was allowed to stay here. Now, there were times where he wanted to move out and I couldn't get him out fast enough because it's a different worry. Right?
Yeah.
But for me, I always wanted him here, and this is my selfishness, my self-centeredness, because I needed to know every day that he was alive.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was self-centered until many years later of me doing my recovery work from being, an unhealthy helper.
Yeah.
So that's just the type of stuff that I do. When I had a mom come to me about a year or so ago, and she came to my meetings for years, and the son was like 20 something. Dad wanted him out of the house, and she couldn't bear it. And she goes, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, what does, let's call him Timmy, like to do? She goes, he's always wanted to play guitar. And I said, well, you know what? We just opened a new recovery center, community center just opened in Concord. How about you negotiate with him? You go talk to a recovery coach once a week at the center, and I'll pay for a guitar lesson. They made that agreement. He's last I knew, he was sober like 7 months, but he also found out he was an artist, right?
Yeah.
Because she did something positive. It was a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
And that, I'll say that I'll never forget that I've spoke at your meetings a few times. So you have people in recovery come in and share their story to the parents as like a piece of hope. And then you opened it up for questions and they could like ask questions. And I'll never forget some of the like most impactful questions, things that I never even like
Thought about
thought
probably.
about. And
Yeah.
like, they were some of the most impactful like things that I spoke, that I, for me and my healing, not realizing the harm that I was causing. Because for so long as in that lifestyle, it was like, well, it's only just me, like it's just me I'm affecting, right? That's like the the person out there using, and I say it's trauma. I mean, you know, and it's like we have addictions, but the main thing is, you know, people have trauma and they need to be loved through the trauma. You need to figure out why somebody wants to escape their reality that bad, you know?
Yeah.
I was an escaper. It was just anything I could do to not have to feel, you know, feel deeply because of all the shit.
Yeah.
But, you know, getting asked some of those questions from the other side and being like, oh yeah, you know, my poor parents, and like you know, just a lot of healing came out of that for me. So
I've had a lot of people that came, because once a month I'd have a speaker who was a person in recovery, and the parents did ask some hard questions sometimes, but I also had the speakers would cry. You know, I've had them cry.
I did.
Well, I'm sure I spoke at
I cried.
And didn't you? It wasn't, you know, it was your girlfriend that came with her dad.
Yeah, which one was it? Yeah, I mean, I don't remember.
Oh, she was. Oh.
I think I brought a couple sponsees and stuff with me because I would always do that.
Yeah,
Was
she
it
was.
Amanda?
I think she did skincare. I can't think. Chantel or something. Begin with a C, I think. She worked in a salon.
Yeah, it's like after COVID, it's like before, like the memory, like I'm like, I don't even know what year it is. Where are we? What happened? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I remember the first time I shared at a support group, there was one in Plastow by Denise. Do you know Denise? You probably know Denise. Oh my God, why am I drawing a blank on her last name?
She worked at Raw.
Denise yes.
And she had blonde hair.
Incredible.
Now in Hawaii.
Yes, now in Hawaii. Incredible woman. And she asked me a few times to go speak at that meeting in Plastow, the support group for parents who had lost their children to addiction. And I remember like going there and just like leaving like not all right, like feeling like, you know, the worst survivor's guilt. All these parents like lost their kids, and I'm up there telling my story and how I lived, and I'm like, how is this like helping them? Like I'm up here living and their kids are all not here. It was just terrible. And I'll never forget one dad at the end of a meeting was like, I come to these and I listen to these stories, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Like he kept saying, you're here, or my son's not here, so you could be. And I just like, I left like sobbing, like couldn't even believe he said that to me. And he was just being like, so I could tell he was so genuine. And he's like, I keep coming and I keep showing up and I keep wanting to listen because I know my son didn't die for no reason. Like you are the reason my son died. He like straight up looked at me in my face and was like,
yeah,
that's just what I believe. And I was just like, oh my God, how could you even want to be here and hear from us who,
right.
You know?
And I'll tell you, that fear of getting that phone call keeps us engaged in unhealthy helping. Because if something happened and I didn't pay off his drug dealers and I didn't get him out of jail, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, and he died, could I live with myself? That's, again, you know, that's my self-centeredness, right? That I've learned that. So I've done the steps the way, like AA way, even though I don't belong, because I was a controlling mother, and I wanted, when my son was doing the steps, I wanted to make sure it was okay. So
you like had to be a part of too.
But it was the greatest gift I ever gave myself.
Yeah, everyone could benefit from the 12 steps. I say it all the time. And everyone could benefit, getting those resentments out on paper, letting them go, doing the turnarounds, all of it, right? I agree. My mom was very opposite spectrum of you. Like she was like tough cookie. Like she was like, she got to the point where she was just like, you want to use, go ahead, see you later, don't come home till you're ready to like get help, you know? Like she really just was kind of like a tough love. And she said that towards the end like of my use, like she had to like have that conversation with herself, like I have to let this go and let her figure this out on her own, and I can't control this, because my mom was very sick as well. And then as soon as I got sober, she ended up with breast cancer, and she like swore up and down it was because she held so much stress and like darkness in her body for so long. But then, you know, finally it just surfaced. But
we do get really sick. and
Yeah.
stuff like that happens. And you know, I had one mom who committed suicide. She just could not take the pain.
Yeah.
It is. My youngest son almost died at 7 and again at 9. And I'll never forget, at 7, he was really little, and the doctor said, "We don't know if he's going to make it. Just pray." And that's what I lived with my son, my other son, my oldest son. I just prayed every day, please,
Wow.
just please let him survive. I will do whatever, you know, I made a commitment. I will pay it forward.
Yeah.
Just keep him safe. And then COVID hit and then everything fell apart. So I stopped doing it, but I'm trying to get this out nationally, what I do. I have all kinds of workshops and, I do, one-on-one with people or I'll do workshops for people who work in the field. I have a variety of different things that I do.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's needed. There's plenty of meetings. Well, I shouldn't say plenty. There's a good enough amount of resources for addicts and alcoholics and everyone to like kind of get that help. But I feel like you're right. There's just not that much help for the family, the support, the lovers, just all of it.
The family.
Yeah.
Because everyone's affected.
Everyone's affected.
And if you on my website, I have something that says, just treating the person with a substance use disorder is only treating part of the problem.
The problem, yeah.
When you start including the parents, the siblings, the
children,
partners, whatever, bring us. We all have to be in a recovery program, because for many years, my son was in and out of rehab. And I was part of the problem, because as soon as he'd come home, I'd be on him. You need to get a job. You owe us thousands and thousands of dollars. And you did this.
Yeah.
And I was his worst nightmare, because I couldn't zip my lip. And so I was constantly blaming and shaming him for my pain that I participated in. But I didn't know back then that I was part of the problem until I started my healing journey. Then I started to realize I needed to work on me.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, where do people don't know that, right? So people
don't
just
know
like
that.
think the addict goes to, or the person in recovery is going to treatment, that they're gonna come out of their 30-day treatment like, okay, you're ready, like you're ready to get a job, like you're good to go, like be a parent, do this, do that. It's like, no, you're not educated on the fact that however long they've used, like their mental capacity, like emotional maturity, like really all of it.
Well, you're in pause the first year to 24 months, right? 12 to 24 months post-acute withdrawal syndrome. I had so many parents that would come to me and go, I think they're using. And I said, why? Well, we have this conversation and it's like brain fog. And I said, oh, well, how long has your child been in recovery? Well, like 9 months. I said, oh, well, what drug were they on? How long did they use? And when you get to this stage, you'll start to have conversations, because his brain is healing. Yeah. And then it will start, the brain fog will start to dissipate, and then they would come back like 6 months later, cry and go, thank you. That was such a gift, because I didn't know that. Right. We don't know what we don't know until somebody tells us. But and so the way people can find out is I've written 4 books, and I just released 2 new ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first book was called Peeling the Onion, and it was my journey. And it talks about my pain, because my story is mine to tell. I can't tell my son's story. It's not mine to tell. And it has the old language in it. And then I wrote Just for Today, which is 365 days of, just like a daily affirmation type thing about addiction and recovery. And then this year I released Sharing Without Shame. And then it has a journal called Healing Without Shame. And in the book, I talk about all this stuff, but I also have, I think it was 6 parents who talked about how they navigated through their child's active addiction, how they kept their head above water. And I have their people who are in recovery talk about what their pathway was. to recover, because they're all different, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Amen to
all
that.
pathways, all pathways.
And so many people, like, this is, I was taught, you know, you go to AA or NA and 90 meetings, 90 days, and that's the only way you're going to stay sober. And I know that's not true. I know
No.
there's so many different pathways for different people.
And you're not
everybody's
sick
journey is different.
forever.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, we're not sick. We're not sick forever. We don't need to be fixed. We're not broken. We're not, you know, these mental defects, like the language, like you said, it's like
Awful.
the character, like it's the character defects, and it's all filled with like shame and guilt
Negativity.
and fear. If you do this, if you drink again, you'll die. Like, literally
Yeah.
just fear of sickness. And the same thing, like, you know, I can't believe sometimes that I stood up at a podium in front of, you know, thousands of people and was like, yeah, I was born this way. I was born sick. I was born a mental defect. Like, I'm going to be sick forever. I'm like, even the thought of like having to say that about myself, that I said it for so long. And the second that I stopped saying those things about myself and changed the language about myself and saying that I'm on a healing journey and that, you know, I'm not sick and, you know, my heart is beautiful and, you know, I don't have to live in this fear and I can trust myself. Like, I can trust myself. I don't constantly have to ask somebody else what their opinion of how I should live my life, right?
Yeah.
We get
You don't have to be validated anymore.
like, you're
enough.
Yeah,
exactly.
like, my therapist told me, she said, what if you've earned the right to be your own counsel? She said, you finally earned the right to be your own counsel. Yeah, in the beginning, I needed my brain washed. I needed those kinds of things. I needed that kind of like step up. But, you know, 9 years later, like, that wasn't the reality anymore, because I dived so deep into the 11th step, dived so deep into the 12th step, the 12th step, created a reality that I didn't want to escape from. And then the reality of being like, oh, I'm sick. Like, I'm not sick.
Yeah.
I'm healthy and happy and healing. And I'm a mom and a business owner and all these amazing things. Like,
thriving.
That doesn't make sense. That language, like, really, like, why do we have to say that forever? That just, why am I putting myself in that box? Why are we putting ourselves in that prison of this forever?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just, you know, old school, right?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It was written so long ago, and like, there should be an updated version, but who knows? Maybe there will be one. Maybe we'll make one.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a sponsor when I wanted to go through the steps, and this woman this woman Betty and I, she started All Addictions Big Book Step Study meeting, and that's another reason why I did it, so I could facilitate. So we had people who were gamers and addicted to sex, and, you know, me addicted to my son. He became my drug of choice, right? And I forget where I was going with that. And so one of the ladies there rewrote the Big Book. Yeah.
So good. I need a copy of this.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened to that. I'll have to ask Betty if anything ever happened.
Yeah, let us know.
It was two women. They rewrote the Big Book because they didn't like the language.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, and one of them didn't. She did not like the word God.
I know.
So that she wanted that taken out.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. Yeah.
I mean, God, everything's God. Like, people, like, that's the thing. Like, there is some
people get so hung up on the word God. Like,
I believe it's a universal energy.
Same. Like,
well, God,
to your
no judgment. It's just, you know, it's pure love.
To me, it's love. Yeah.
Written in my big book, God as good, orderly direction. Good, orderly direction. Like, follow good, or, you know what I mean? Like, God, like, create it whatever you want it to be. Like, why do you have to get so shooken up about a word? There's Buddha, there's, you know, there's all these other gods and deities and things like that it's the universe, it's the moon, it's the ocean, like, it's God.
Us.
It's us.
To me, it's love. It's just divine love. That's like what God is to me. Like,
breath.
Yeah.
Breath is actually God, because we all come from breath. Life comes from breath. We all breathe the same air. We all breathe the same.
Right.
Breath. Divine oneness, like, all of it, right? It's just, and so beautiful.
Yeah. Right. And isn't it a shame it takes so long? I mean, it's great that y'all are young enough that you're figuring it out so
Yeah.
young, rather than, when you're much
So much
older.
later.
What a waste of pain, dealing with when it could have been fixed earlier, not fixed, but healed earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I say it all the time. I was at a thing for Marianne Williamson actually, and what we're missing too is prevention. Like we're not prevent like the prevention piece of it all. We're not in. This is happening way before high school. It's middle school, sometimes elementary school. Like these things are happening.
Yeah.
These kids aren't knowing how to deal with their emotions. Now we've got COVID. Now we've got all these things, and we've got all these identities and this just confusing thing, and everybody wants to be unique, and everybody doesn't realize that we already are unique, and it's just like these things are like creating so much more separation and so much confusion for children, that like the prevention needs to be there. Like we need to be talking, we need to be teaching kids how to feel their emotions, we need to be teaching kids how to breathe, we need to be, and same thing with parents. Like the education piece is missing, and
lacking for sure.
it is so beautiful what you're doing with just the education piece and letting people know that unhealthy helping and what that looks like, and getting the word out there and being vulnerable,
and also just being able to admit that. A lot of people wouldn't admit that. Like for you to come and say like, yeah, I was an unhealthy helper, like I was part of the problem, like that's huge in itself. Taking that ownership and accountability.
Yeah. It's funny when I used to speak at Concord Hospital for like 15 years. I spoke there every month, and there was this guy, and I was talking about everything I did wrong. And he's like, has tears in his eyes. He says, I've never heard a parent admit what they've done wrong. All they tell us is what we do wrong. And I was like, yeah, I did a lot wrong, and I had a lot of guilt for that, but I didn't know better. One of my workshops is when you know better, you do better.
I say that all the time.
I like that.
Yeah, because we don't know what we don't know, especially coming into this world. I mean, you're thrown into this, your child is sick and suffering, and you don't really know what's going on, and you're trying to figure that out. And why would he want to be honest with me when till he needed to be?
It's even scary for us, like as the addict. Like I was like, what do I even do? Who do I even tell? Is like, am I going to be in trouble? Like I just remember being like, and then like you said, when I did tell my mom, she was like, well, I don't know what the fuck we're supposed to do. Like, what are we supposed to do? Like, she was like, is there like treatment for kids your age? Cause like, this was like 2013 and I was in college, and like, it wasn't really talked about like recovery like this. And they didn't have big sober houses at that time really. And so she's like, do I send you to rehab? Like, are there going to be a bunch of like scary people that I'm like, I don't know, mom. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to tell you, like, I got a serious problem. Like, we got to figure something out. So
I'll tell you a funny story. Years ago, and it was, I think, my son's second rehab. And I thought, okay, this is when I had started my, going on my spiritual journey and really being connected and being a Shambhali Reiki master and doing all that work. And so I want to send him to a place where they do Reiki and they do all this energy healing, holistic healing, because that's the way to go.
Yeah.
And so I called this place in Florida. I made arrangements. They had a spa. They had, they were gonna when you go in the heated room, like get all those toxins out of the body.
Probably sweat it out.
Yeah. And so then I called JetBlue. Well, I think I'm calling JetBlue to make his arrangements to fly to Florida. And I hear NA hotline. And I went, what? The woman goes, NA hotline. I said, you've got to be kidding me. And she goes, no, this is the NA hotline. I said, well, I thought I was calling JetBlue. And she goes, what's going on? I said, I'm trying to get my son into rehab. She goes, you're kidding me. Where are you sending him? I said, to Florida. She goes, oh, how much is that costing you? I said, 30 grand a month. She goes, can you afford it? I said, absolutely not. And she goes, does your husband know? Absolutely not. And she goes, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out later. I just want to get him on the plane and get him there.
Oh my
She talked
gosh.
me out of sending him. And she said, don't do it, because there's no guarantee he's going to remain sober after spending 30 grand.
That's right.
And it was the first time I listened to anybody.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
funny how-
crazy what the treatment centers, they'll make you remortgage your house.
Yeah,
and
my
do
mom
all
had to
these things.
refinance our house
Yeah, and it's
to
like,
send me.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's really
Yeah.
crazy. And then parents are uneducated and they think they're sending their kids on a vacation, and then they send them, and then you're not educated because you're not getting educated. You send them, spend $30,000, they come home and you're like, now you owe me all kinds of money, go back to work. And then you definitely wasted your $30,000 because they're not
Yeah.
going to get well if they're under that extra stress and pressure and just coming off the drugs and trying to get mentally clear. Like,
Yeah.
and there is the lack of education. Like, if you take $30,000 from somebody to go to rehab, the family needs that. A family educational piece should be like involved in
part
that.
of it.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely should be part of it.
I agree.
Yeah, it's really hard. The first time I brought him to detox, the guy put his arm across the door, let my son in, and then stopped my husband and I. I said, well, we're coming in. He goes, no, you're not. Say goodbye. And they shut the door, and that was it. And then you call and go, is Bo so-and-so there? We don't know anybody by that name. And I'm footing the bill, but you can't tell me. That is a horrible thing. And then I got a call my son was seen with a suitcase walking through Manchester, because I get in the car and I'm going to find him. And
Oh my God.
mother's radar, I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's there's crazy stuff that goes on, and there's a lot that can be dangerous, and they play on our heartstrings,
Yeah.
and they'll it's probably a multi-billion-dollar business
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
And
People brokers, I say it all the time.
yeah,
That's
don't
why I
even
stopped
get me
working in
started on
treatment.
that
That's
stuff.
why I stopped working in treatment. It started
People
to feel like
brokers.
that. And it's all about what kind of insurance you have, and if you have a PPO, and it was like how many people, and then the people with Medicaid called and you didn't help them because you wanted the beds for the people that had the money. And it's really, they are treating addiction wrong, and they're, putting them all on meds right away, which I'm all about whatever people need. But the truth is that people just need to love and heal and love themselves and figure out the trauma and feel. They
Yeah.
need to feel whatever they didn't feel that they were running from.
Yeah, instead of stuffing
And they're
it down.
not going to feel it if they're on 17 different medications for this, that. Of course,
Well, that
people
numbs them out, right?
Right, it numbs them out, and it's like, yeah, of course you have anxiety. Of course you're depressed. Like, you just did drugs for however long you did drugs for. Let's
Yeah.
figure out how to get you outside, get you on a healthy diet. You go into treatment, all you're fed is carbs and sugars and snacks, and they've got snack bags everywhere and soda on the machines. It's like nobody's teaching them how to like be healthy and go put their feet in nature and get sunshine and
Yeah.
cry and feel
Right.
what they need to feel.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
you can have 7 new medications. You could be on this, and you could be on this SSRI, and you got to be on Wellbutrin, and you got to be on gabapentin for your nerve. Like,
Yeah.
what?
My rehab experience was so toxic.
I didn't
And
take
then
any
you
of the
have to
meds.
detox off of all of that.
Yeah.
That can be harder than getting off of heroin.
Mm-hmm.
I had
Detoxing
told one
off
of the
cycle.
doctors, he was putting my son on something. I said, no, that's not going to happen. He goes, it's not your decision. I said, oh, yes, it is. He's underage. He's 18. He lives in my house, and it's my rules. And I'm not going to get him detoxed off of this stuff later on down the road. Just not going to happen. I mean, thankfully he didn't want to either. And so he never went the meds piece of it, but
Yeah.
it's all about the money. It's not
Yeah.
about the person. And that's what's so sickening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
even that is like a billion-dollar industry when you realize that all the med doctors are paying them to prescribe them on the certain medications that they're on. And it's like they're on it's what even the doctors before they get into rehab, some people come into rehab and they're on Adderall, they're on
Yeah.
Valiums, they're on fentanyl, they're on, 7 different medications from their doctor, and their doctor's telling them that it's safe to take all these things, and then they have to go to rehab because they start drinking on it. And now they're in rehab on everything that like it's prescribed from the doctor. There's this safe space, and it's like, what?
I
And
will
people think
say,
because it's prescribed by a doctor, it's okay, but they
Yeah.
don't realize that if you're on it long enough, it changes your brain chemistry.
yep,
Yep.
that's a fact.
Misinformed. Everybody is misinformed and
Yeah.
uneducated and blindly trusting and
Yeah.
not realizing that we, like we started out by saying in the beginning of this podcast, are so capable to heal our bodies from every ailment that we have, any sickness, anything. Our bodies know exactly how to heal us from the inside out.
Yeah.
And you go back to, you know, years, I mean, decades, right? And it was all natural. Everything was
Yeah.
holistic or plant-based or whatever. And people did, they they got healthy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I
well,
think that
nature,
helps today, using
I will
plant-based.
say though, like I am an advocate for Vivitrol just because it saved my life, and I know.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm an advocate for Suboxone and any kind of medicine if it's a short term and there's a
Yeah.
healing plan for
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever you need, as long as
We
there is
opted for
some.
Vivitrol because we knew I wouldn't withdraw from it. We knew I wouldn't be like addicted to it it was literally just an opiate blocker. Like if I chose to get high, I
And
couldn't
it's
get high.
expensive. That's the downfall of that. And a lot of, parents can't afford it.
Well,
which
thank
is,
God my insurance did cover that. And I did have I did have
Yeah, you were
Medicaid.
lucky.
Yeah, I got very lucky. I did have Medicaid, and they were running like a trial run, and I got covered, so that was cool. And I got to take it for like a year. I promised my mom I would take Vivitrol for like a year because I'd never made it past like 3 months. And it helped me. That
Yeah.
shot, I will say, because you're right, you go through the pause, the post-acute withdrawal symptoms, and you go through all those like mental obsessions towards like the beginning of getting sober, right? And so that Vivitrol shot for my first like 30 to 60 days was so vital for me because I could never make it past like the obsession and the like. I would dream about it. I would wake up sweating about it, like just insane. And so Vivitrol made it a little bit easier for me to kind of have a little clearer thoughts, I think, and not be so rat race in my mind those first 30 to 60 days.
Recovery, and a lot of parents don't understand this. It's a 10+ year process. So the first 1 to 12 months, say up to 2 years, you're in post-acute withdrawal syndrome. It's like 3 years into recovery where a person can be honest with everybody else because they're finally honest with themselves, right?
Yep.
In those 3 years, they're working with getting connected, right, to themselves, to other people, so asking for help and starting to move forward. And then it just expands. I have a class on that explains the whole 12 like up to 10 years. And when I look at it, my son followed it, and from all the work I've done, it's very prevalent how you see people get better and better and better all the time. I mean, you guys are perfect examples of that. Look where you are today, right? Just always
Yeah.
stepping up, right? And getting better. But when you're new into this world of your child's going to be in recovery, I thought I send him to rehab and we're one and done. They perform like a, lobotomy or whatever it is. And they're going to
Right in the eyeball.
Yeah. And we're going to go home and we don't have to talk about this again.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're healed and you're good. So just go to work and don't tell anybody. And
Yeah.
we'll do the same.
Yeah.
And that blew up in my face.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but thankfully things are a lot better today than what they were. I mean, the state of New Hampshire has done some great stuff, bringing recovery coaching in and certified recovery support workers now and recovery centers. And, there's just a lot of,
Yeah, I
lot
agree.
of good things that weren't available when my son got sober in 2008.
Yeah, there's definitely way more resources, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we usually end with saying, what is one thing that if you could tell the parents one thing, or
Listeners,
like, what is the one takeaway or one thing of everything that we've talked about, or like your lesson that you've learned?
your life lesson, biggest life lesson.
Oh God.
Put you on the spot.
No pressure.
Yeah. You know, for all the parents out there that are just don't know what to do, and they provide the unhealthy helping, I get it. And we don't stop that until we hit our enough. Just like when our children hit their enough and they decide they're going to work a recovery program, right?
Yeah.
We mimic each other's behaviors. I have a whole thing on that about, how we mimic each other's behavior, the cycle of addiction, how as a parent, I'm following my son all around the cycle, and I'm part of the problem, but I don't know it. But that's what we do. We it's like a cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
And all in the name of love.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where, like your mom, I said to my son, I love you. Here's a number. I hope you'll get the help that I think you deserve. But, I don't know that it's going to work, you being here anymore. And
Yep.
By the grace of God, he went to treatment on Mother's Day, and he's been sober 16 years.
Yeah, it's
16 and a half
incredible.
years now. And
Incredible.
he's like, and you guys are miracles, right?
Yeah.
And no one's talking about the miracles. And that's what needs to be displayed. That's what should be on the news, not some person with a needle in their arm and, drooling. Let's show the positive.
Yeah.
Right? Let's show the good in recovery.
Focus on the good, for sure.
So yeah, there's miracles every day.
That's so beautiful. This was so good. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with
Thanks for
us.
having me.
Wish you could have came in person. I would love to hug you right now. So we could just do a little hand hug.
Little hand
hand hug. But seriously, this
we'll
was
meet
so
someday
great.
in person.
Yes, definitely would love that.
I just don't drive. It's too dark for me to drive.
Yes, I totally get it. Listen,
my mom's the same way.
I'm 28 and I can't see at night when I drive. I'm like, please don't let me drive at night.
Right? Yeah, it's just tough. So, but I appreciate you doing this for me this way. So
how can do you run any social media or anything like that? How can we tag you and plug you in? Do you have like a website?
Yeah, I have a website. It's an e-commerce store, so it has all my stuff on it.
Amazing. Your books?
Yep. My books, everything's on there.
What's your website?
It's sharingwithoutshame.com.
Perfect. Sharingwithoutshame.com. I will make sure.
We'll link it.
Yep, we'll link it all.
Thanks.
We will tag you. And
Appreciate it.
we just appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being
Well,
so
I
open and
appreciate
vulnerable.
you, and yeah, thank you.
Yes,
And
thank you.
All
Until
right.
next week, Sacred Rebels.
And we close the same way we
Yes.
started. We'll close off with our big deep breath. So one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. Really breathe in through the nose, lift up, fill up, rise up. And let that shit go.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to what we have to say. It means the world. As always, we want to end this episode by reminding you that we are not medical professionals and we are not giving any type of medical advice. We are simply sharing our experience and solutions.
We are here with the intentions of reminding you that you are never alone and that everyone's healing journey is unique to the individual. Make sure to follow us on all social media platforms to stay updated. Stay well, Sacred Rebels. See you next time.